Hello, guys, and welcome to the second video of our summer series for this season. And this time we are looking at the 2017 to 2018 season and what happened before and during and at the end of it. And we start with the off-season stuff. Plenty of stuff actually happened during this season and before and after in terms of league changes. And the first and most notable thing, of course, were the new owners. Five new owners joined the league for this season, and this was the most we've had since the start. Uh, I don't know why will is spelled with a with not capital letter. I'm sorry, it was not intentional. I think the font has changed between changing computers. Anyway, these are our new owners. Two of them relocated their teams in Kevin and Will, who became Hearst and Orlando respectively. And Ajay relocated later, like before last season. And most of these teams were in some state of rebuild and or retool to start, except for Jeremy and his Upper Canada Patriots, who were competitive right off the bat, as we will see in the later part of this video. So this was the biggest new thing during the season, but other things as well. First, we went to the auctions, went to bidding salary plus term, so not only salary. So basically, we jumped to the I think 2.0 version of the sheet. We dubbed it. Next, that retaining salary option was introduced, which boosted trades in terms of numbers and options that we have. And also we have changes. We had changes to the scoring system, and the special team goals category became the special team points, and the goalie wins became goalie points. There are definitely some issues with this font and the capital letters, but we will live with it. Uh, and also, apparently, I streamed the draft lottery on Twitch, which I don't even remember. I have a Twitch account, but apparently I have one follower, which must be one of you guys, because I have literally, and it says here, we don't know much about Bar Racer, but I'm sure it's great, which I found funny, so I added it here. But really didn't remember I streamed the first lottery on Twitch. Anyway, onto the trades, and as the next part we look at it. And the first big trade we look at it, is one that we already touched in the previous video, and Clint on the chat mentioned it, the Makar for Pasternak trade. So we already took a look at the 2017 draft and saw that Makar was the big piece, the best player from that draft, and he went right uh, even before playing for the Mighty Camels. He was traded to the Grizzlies, and this was quite a bigger trade than Clint mentioned on the chat. As he said that it was Makar for Pasternak. Yeah, these were the main pieces, but there were a lot of other players involved, as you see that the Mighty Camels were going for it this season, and the Grizzly Alums were basically going into a rebuild. So a lot of contracts unloaded. And apart from Makar, with the second round in 2018, Wolfsburg managed to pick Kirill Marchenko, which is another piece that is currently on their roster. So it's a trade that really benefited uh, James and his team in the long run. The next trade we look at is one between the mm, top two teams from the season that we will see in the standings between the Steelers and the Ramparts. Uh, Honestly, when I looked at this, I don't remember or can't remember what I was thinking. Apparently, I must have been higher on Mott or Dochin in terms of what can they contribute, because the main pieces in Horvat and Zibanejad, it was obvious even in that season that Zibanejad has the higher upside. But for what it's worth, Horvat is still a big piece of my team, so we can say that it's not a total loss. And the fifth rounder here that was acquired by the Steelers in 2019. It was quite a rabbit hole to see what happened with it, because it was later traded from myself to Jay, and then went to Mark, and then went to Andrew, who drafted the Mastro Simone guy, who is still a long-term prospect. And the third round here in 2018, which went to the Ramparts, is actually involved in the next trade, which is this one, which is, I think, quite. First, it's a big one, and then it's quite a puzzling one, since the haul that the Ramparts got was quite impressive. They got the 2018 first round pick, which turned out to be the first overall selection, which was not lottery protected. And I think definitely Greg didn't expect this pick to be that high. But it was a selection that was traded later to the Steelers, and it became Rasmus Dahlin. So it was not made by the Ramparts. The Ramparts got James Neal, who was quite good in that season. And the second round they picked up in this trade was later traded to, I think, Brad, and then got to Will, who drafted Kevin Addison. And the third rounder from the above trade went to Greg in this one, who drafted Iskakov. And the main pieces that Greg got in the trade were Dougie Hamilton, Clefbaum, who was at the time still playing and decent player, and Jake Wallman, who was really a good prospect and highly thought of prospect. So basically, he tried to get help on the blue line for now and for the future. But I still think it's a definitely quite seems quite a lopsided trade looking back at it from 6 years onwards. In that the top selection was involved in the 2018 draft. The next trade we focus on is one between the Steelers and the Ghosts, which swapped young goaltenders. I remember I remember Jay being quite worried about this trade, that it seemed like a landslide win for uh, for myself, but I don't think it's that one-sided, especially since Bennett will manage to develop although slow into a quite a good player. And the 2018 second round pick I acquired in this trade was later traded back to the Ghosts, and they picked Jonathan Berggren, who is quite a good selection, and I think maybe even has more upside than the first round selection of Wallstrom, who is involved in this trade. A pretty big trade involving some young pieces and high draft picks. And the last big trade we take a look at is not maybe as big as the other four, but it's a swap between the Ghosts and the Ice Dice, which involved Eric Carlson and a first round pick in 2018, which became the third overall selection, and Philip Zadina, who was, I think, later traded to the Sour Bears, if I remember correctly. And the Las Vegas team got basically rented Eric Carlson for the season, and had a fourth round pick, which is Nicholas Nordgren, who is, I don't know much about this prospect, but it's still, I think, in the system for the Ice Dice. And these were the bigger trades I selected to take a look. And next, we look at the season itself. And these are the standings. What is interesting is that the Ramparts and Steelers uh, were the top two teams again in the same order, and it's the only time it has happened so far. But unlike the previous season, this time around it wasn't close. Basically, the Ramparts were a wagon for this season. And Jeremy, who was in his first season, managed to grab the Adams Division title. So great first season for him as an owner of the Patriots. And these are what the main contributors for the top three teams were on these teams. As you can see, the Ramparts were with very solid goaltending and basically a loaded team with a lot of veterans and good players. Like you see Matthew Tkachuk here at the bottom because he was still not the Matthew Tkachuk we know now, but he was coming along. And my team was mostly focused on strength from the blue line with Gostisbehere, Letang, and Eric Carlson, who I acquired, I think, after that trade we saw from that he went to the Ice Dice and then he came to the Steelers. So basically, he was traded a couple of times during that season. And the Patriots had Malkin and Crosby combination, which is quite awesome, in especially for a Penguins fans. Although I'm not sure Jeremy is a Penguins fan, but he can maybe share his his thoughts and memories about this season. How did he ended up owning both? And moving on, the Norris plummets after being dominant for a couple of seasons. Sparta and Wolfsburg embrace full rebuilds, and the other three teams from the Norris barely make the playoff cut. So none of the Norris teams were actually among the top teams in the division. Highest risers from the previous season were the Mighty Camels and the Scouts, who went from well outside the playoffs to contending status, especially the Mighty Camels, as we'll see. And looking at the picture in the NHL, Vegas joined, and as a result, and unexpectedly had an amazing season, which resulted in some individual performances that were also unexpected, like Marc-Andre Fleury's returns to top five goaltending in the league, and emergence of Wild Bill. But here are a couple of questions. Like, for example, goals. Who led the leagues in goals? It was easy. It was Ovechkin again with only 49, and not a 50 goal season. But a tougher question: who led the league in penalty minutes? And it was Michael Haley, and I included that here because this was the last season and the last player to hit 200 penalty minutes in a season. So we haven't had that since, and penalty minutes have been in steady decline over the past 10 years. This was the last 200 penalty minute season by a single player. So what happened in the playoffs? Starting with looking at the semifinals, and it was the year of the underdog, as it was named in the league. I think Max was the one who coined the term, and it was the year of the underdog because none of the division champions made it to the semifinals. So basically, all quarters ended up with upsets, and you see here the seeds. The Mighty Camels played the Ice Dice, who were the 12th seed and on a bit of a Cinderella run. But the Mighty Camels managed to win against them, and the Jackalopes won a close battle with the Scouts. And this led to the third place playoff, which was won by the Ice Dice. So they managed to closely secure this third spot to cap their unexpected run from 12th place. And in the final, the Jackalopes won against the Mighty Camels, and these were the main players for both teams in the finals. And as you see, like Max had I would say, not a star-studded team, but a very well-rounded one with three good goaltenders, and it must have been maybe the best season by Alex Galchenyuk, who shows up here amongst the top contributors. So probably I don't recall if that was his. Did he had a 30 goal season? I think he had. Maybe it was that season. And on the Mighty Camels, they were pretty heavy team with guys like Tom Wilson and Lucic. And you see here Pasternak, who was acquired in that big trade with Makar, was among the top contributors. So it was, you can say it was worth for Clint to load up and trade away Makar, but it still is a tough piece to lose in the long term. And funny thing, the consolation final in the previous season saw the Mighty Camels against the Jackalopes again meet in the consolation final. And what we had in the consolation third place matchup in this previous season was again the Mighty Camels versus the Jackalopes. So if we extrapolate this data and look at a crystal ball for next season, can we expect the third place matchup in the playoffs to be a game between the Jackalopes and the Mighty Camels? So this is an early 23-24 prediction out of the crystal ball. And that's all I have for you and for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I have one more idea for next week, but I'll see if I would manage to put it together in terms of uh, enough content to worth the video. But even if it's a short one, I think I will manage. So thanks again, and see you around. Bye.